you're going to do part-time farming, you have to invest in building the capacities of the people on the farm. If you have invested on the farm so much and you want to bring a class 8 guy who has no clue and you want it to be run properly and correctly, it would never work. We have so many young people who have been used to quick money. It takes long for the balance sheet and the Excel to look like it has some shape. So if young people are going to be engaged in agriculture, it must be they are on a transition stage. They have no patience. So one of the things I've learned and which helps me a lot is that techniques, they take time. You're not going to work on soil today and the productivity shoots. Organic, sustainable farming takes time. To heal the land, it takes time. For trees to grow, you will not plant mangoes today and harvest tomorrow. So the selection of enterprises that we have to do on the farm is to look at your short-term cash flow and your long-term cash flow and the medium term. Now, after 8 years, when I have planted so many trees, what I do is I speak to the avocados. Why are you giving me 3 avocados? One of the challenges we have is deworming. And the kind of water we are having and how we prepare our food, it's very easy to get worms. One of the biggest available dewormer we have is pumpkin seeds and the pumpkin. But when we prepare, and we've been having conversation in communities, the men will not eat because it's just there. It's not exciting.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Organic Guy podcast. This is your home of organic conversations. I'm your host, the Organic Guy, and right around here we have conversation on how we can make our food system to work for us rather than against us. Today I do have a special guest with us. She is very knowledgeable in the areas of sustainable agriculture and especially in agroecology. So I'm super delighted for her to be able really to share a wealth of knowledge in this space and her experience in terms of what she's been able to do with small-scale farmers and basically helping farmers adopt sustainable farming practices. She goes by the name of Stellamaris. Stella, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
It was very interesting when I was doing a bit of research about you that you actually went to meet the Pope. How was it and how did you end up meeting the Pope?
I was even surprised to be invited to meet the late Pope Francis, because I was a great admirer of one of the books he's written, and he wrote a very important encyclopedia called Laudato Si. And Laudato Si is about care for a common home. And in that book, he talks about how do we produce without harming our common home. And so I was invited as an alumni of a student movement that is anchored throughout the world called Pax Romana, the international movement of Catholic students. And I was a founder of a chapter in one of our local universities as the chairperson in the 90s. And I was invited as somebody who continues to do work regarding social justice. So it was a very honorable moment, not just to meet him, but to have a few minutes with him in a private audience. And I can say he had a very calming presence. He was a very calm person, very approachable. And really, it's a special feeling you get. You cannot really explain when you meet somebody who is committed or who was committed to living differently.
Yeah, I can only imagine that's a special experience, especially for someone who grew up as Catholic myself. It's always a desire to just go. I'm sure you were impressed by the old cathedral, like the old art that goes into the place.
A very pleasant experience. We had time to explore various important places within the Vatican. And also, you watch the masses, but it's a complete different feeling when I chose to climb some 320-something stairs up to see the view of Rome. And for me, that was like a personal pilgrimage at that particular time.
Yeah, that's nice. Before we get into the conversation, it's It's an interesting, I mean, you're very embodied into the sustainable agriculture and the agroecology movement. But before we get to that, take us back to your early childhood, because I'm a huge believer in terms of like how you grew up has a huge impact on who you become later in life. So take us through your early childhood. How was it like? Who are you as a person in terms of personality? So what was going on?
I was born in rural Kenya in a family of 8 children. I'm the first of the 8 children. My mother was a housewife. My father was a high school teacher who had gone to Egerton University to study agriculture. And he was teaching in university, in high school, and they had a huge school garden. So every Saturday, it was Machakos High School. And in the 70s and early 80s, my dad made sure the boys would grow their own food. So I grew up with a father who had written a book on basic agriculture for schools. And because we were 8 of us, the salary of a high school teacher, as well as you know, was not enough. So farming was a second income. We grew coffee, we grew a lot of food. So we never had to buy food, but we had a range of nutritious food. When I was in primary school, you didn't even bother to cook lunch. You would find bananas ripening, a wide variety that was at home. So really, farming has been part of my life. Responsibility as a firstborn has been embedded into me. Then I was lucky to be admitted to Precious Blood School, Kilungu, where the sisters embedded to us that education is for service. Important that when we get our degrees or we get educated, it's not just for ourselves, it's to imprint on humanity and in a positive way. So that really embedded me. When I go to university in Maseno, I was at a time when we had the former president. And during that time, we had President Moi. And it was at a particular time that the universities had a lot of conflicts. Remember the strikes that were there. And so I happened to come across a group that was training students on leadership, on nonviolence, on peace building, and became the first founder of the International Movement of Catholic Students, Maseno chapter. And that movement looked at preferential option for the poor. And this enabled me to start thinking about social justice. In my second year, I started volunteering with NGOs in Kisumu at a particular time when HIV was really a big issue in that region. So going to the orphanages, serving every Saturday. So that has shaped my life even up to today, to look out for the marginalized, the left outs, and to also ensure that we have zero hunger. I don't understand why we have so many people who are hungry, yet sometimes it's about, are we able to produce nutritious and safe food?
I can definitely see how that has shaped who we've become, because you growing in that like agricultural environment, although we at that time when you're young, you don't really how figure it out, and in some cases most people actually hate being in that like agricultural environment and they dream of something bigger. But it's interesting that you grew in that environment, then you went on to study education, and now you become in this agricultural space. It's fair to say you're very interested in like sustainable agriculture and especially in agroecology. So for you, you can just give us a little bit of a highlight. Like, what does agroecology mean to you?
For me, agroecology is a holistic food approach. It's not about the practices. It's about a social movement, taking care of biodiversity, taking care of the people, and also making sure there's money in the pocket. So it's economical, it has an economic dimension. If we are farmers and we are farming and we don't have money, it doesn't make sense. Because from my early childhood, I knew agriculture has money. When I completed Form 4, I was given a part and a section of the farm to run, and I had to open a bank account that my parents ensured I would be able to deposit money from selling milk, from selling cereals from my portion of the farm, and also be able to budget. So for me as a young person, agriculture was not a burden. I knew it is a place that people can earn income. So for me, when I started I started with organic farming. And one thing that is very unique about agroecology, first, we talk about the environmental dimension. What kind of agriculture are we doing and how does it relate with an environment? We talk about soil, we talk about water, we talk about biodiversity. So every time I ask myself, what agriculture are we doing and is it taking care of the planet for future generations? Because we have borrowed it from them. And secondly, we look at markets. As a farmer, smallholder farmers, can you live on what you produce? Can you take care of your children? Can you have quality of life? That's the economic dimension. How do we market our goods? Are customers ready to pay for fair prices? How do we ensure that brokers don't work against the farmer? Do we have a safety net, insurances for farmers? When, for instance, we have droughts, what happens to the farmers? So agroecology addresses that. And then we talk about agroecology being political because it's about farmers' rights, it's about seed right, it's about land tenure system, and especially in my country where land belongs to men and not women. And then we talk about, of course, the whole food system approach, corporations and smallholder farmers. How do we relate with that? And finally, we look at social movement. How do we include the young people? How do we include the women? How do we include the men and look at the dynamics? We have a lot of intergenerational knowledge. What is passed between the old and the young? And who makes decisions? How do people participate? So for me, I view agroecology as an answer to very many dimensions, and I see it as an integrated approach to a food system.
Yeah, it definitely reflects what it stands for from a socio-economic, political point of view. And I'm glad you sort of hammered the point of like, we need to see how farmers can make money. Like, how can we put money into the farmers' pockets? I think that's an aspect that a lot of people within the agroecology movement don't appreciate enough. Yes, it's good that farmers can adopt these sustainable farming systems, but how can they get that money get into their pockets? So that's a very important part. Something interesting you said is that agroecology is political. What do you mean by that?
Agroecology is political because farmers have rights. They have right to land. They have right to natural resources. And here I walk around Kenya and talk about the right to water and sanitation resources. In which village do we have farmers having piped water for irrigation? They often have water for drinking, domestic use, but for irrigation. We are talking about seed right. And when we talk about seed right, is that many of our farmers have taken to hybrid. We had a case by civil society here and interested farmers regarding seed rights because of a law that existed in our constitution that indigenous seed sharing is illegal. So when we talk about political rights, we're talking about the duty bearers and farmers as right holders. And to negotiate for a right to be realized is political. This week, I was in Baringo, and we had a discussion with 250 farmers in Baringo and Laikipia, and it was on the issue of right to land. Some parts of Baringo, farmers don't have title deed. If you don't have a title deed, can you take a collateral from a bank? If for a woman and a man have formed a family, the Constitution of Kenya gives access to women to co-own land with their husbands. The reality is that land belongs to fathers and brothers. So when I say political, I mean that there is a negotiation. it is a negotiation, for instance, of multinational corporations and local farmers regarding community benefit agreement sharing. So that's why I say I work with farmers or pastoralists who are at the foot of Rift Valley. The Maasais in Shompole, the Maasais in Oldonyonyuke, the Maasais in Torosay, community lands. They own lands jointly. Now, when we talk about rights, you have Tata Magadi. They have mining. They are Africa's largest soda ash producer. And the farmers have to negotiate for water points. Where is the water drawn? From Ewasongiro River. So for a long time, I've worked with them over 10 years. We have had discussion and very fruitful discussions where at least the water points for villages to access clean water have been made available. So for me, that's why I say it's a negotiation. And from very simple, let's not even think about the politics in the real politics. You farm, who keeps the key to the granary? Is it the wife or is the husband? Who decides which portion of land is placed under what crop? In Western Kenya, we have sugarcane, cash crop. We have maize. So when we have the women beginning with the biointensive kitchen garden, they are often assigned the worst part of the land with the rocks, with less fertility, and yet that vegetable is serving the whole family. When they begin working on the land and fertility is seen, they're shifted to another portion. So that's why for me, I say it's politics in the house, in the community, at a sub-national level and a national level.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense if you compare to other farming systems, especially the conventional model where it's like, hey, give me large pieces of land, at least from a government point of view, give me like cheap fertilizers, do my thing and then sell the produce. So from the point of, hey, we want to bring farmers together and we want to put them so that they can have like a political voice for them to air the grievances. Hey, how do we access water? How do we access land? So I think from that perspective also makes sense. Something interesting that you also said is agroecology didn't arrive in Africa. It grew here. So what do you mean from that perspective?
If you ask my colleagues in Latin America, they will tell you agroecology started in Latin America. So I was making a case. I grew up really privileged to see my great-grandmothers and my grandmother. And when we look at the techniques that they were using, the techniques were about diversity, the techniques that were about sharing seeds, the techniques were of taking the soil first, whether they practiced shifting cultivation, whether they decided to intercrop the three sisters, the maize, the beans, and the pumpkin. And if you look back and really think about how you visited your grandmother, she never missed anything to eat. And so for me, agroecology in terms of taking care of the environmental dimension, we are really trying to remember what we lost. When we look at the Ubuntu philosophy of you are because I am, we look at how we had festivals around harvest. When I was growing up, and it's not so long ago, we had what we call solidarity groups. I come from the Kampa community, and so we had Mwethia. So when we closed schools, we decided to form a group of young people. Today we would go to Baraza's home. We weed, we harvest. It was a joy. The next day we would go to somebody else. So we are trying to recall because the burden of agroecology has been left with the women. In Kenya, women do a lot of farm work. So if you're going to compost, if you're going to do trenches, if you're going to take care of the soil, if you're going to aggregate, who takes the food to the market? It's the women. So we want to go, and we did an analysis whether these practices still exist. They do. So we invited people to recall back so that today they go and make compost at Baraza's home. Tomorrow they go to Stella's home, and it makes quicker adoption of the agroecological practices on farm. When it comes to negotiation of better prices, then they aggregate. they have solidarity groups, they have leaders. Remember, we had leaders in our villages. They have chosen leaders, and they have also rules and regulations that if you went against this, if, for instance, people came to work in my home, and then it was in my turn to go to their home. If I didn't go, there was punishment. So we are bringing that back in the social dimension. And the social dimension of Africa is really to take care of those in the margins. We have old women left in the villages. They still need to eat. So what they do, these groups, is to go back, prepare the land for these women, plant it, and ensure that there is food available. So that's what I meant by it didn't arrive surely. It's here. We are packaging names. We are talking about regenerative, sustainability. And this is what our grandmothers and grandfathers. Remember, we concentrated on indigenous diets. I don't know how many. I ask young women, do you know how to cook millet ugali? No. Do you know how to cook pumpkins? In fact, pumpkins is the culprit because many people don't remember that our grandmothers never used to water to cook pumpkin. They would put the banana leaves together with the pumpkin because they were steamed, not to put water. So those are the things that we are trying to remember and to bring them in the conversations. When we have what we call annual seed fairs every year, in the rural areas, we invite people in the villages to bring back seeds that probably are getting lost. And in there, they share. Because if you remember, in our communities, people would go to other people's homes and say, oh, I have found that you have a very nice bean. Can I have some seeds that I can plant? So this is what is the story of really agroecology did not come with the plains. It has always been here.
Certainly, if you look at most agricultural practices that are practiced by agroecology, and if most people actually go back and look in the village what their grandmothers are doing, almost all of them are incorporated. Crop rotation, doing just mulching, or planting like a legume and just a regular crop. So all these practices in agroecology, to some extent, you'll find them with our local farmers. So from that perspective, it actually makes sense as well. You're very much involved in, like, from a policy perspective, trying to have farmers being recognized by whether it's local and national governments. And I think we are seeing better, shall I say, movement from the political class, especially from our county government. So we have, for example, I think Murang'a has like an agroecology policy. I think that's a good momentum. What does this then tell you in terms of like where we are headed from a policy perspective? I think this should be a good step that we are making towards like normalizing agroecology.
We just concluded the National Symposium for Agroecology that has been organized by PELAM. And the National Symposium of Agroecology, we had really an opportunity to have the county directors invited on a panel. And I was seated there and I said, oh, this is so good. Because we had the National Strategy for Agroecology launched last year. We have ISFA, which is the intersectoral coordinating unit, bringing NGOs and government together. And now they're doing an implementation framework for the national strategy. When we go at county level, Vihiga County has an agroecology policy in place. Makueni is at the stage of ensuring that the bill is passed regarding their strategy. We had stories of Tharaka Nithi who have already made pathways to having an agroecology policy. Of course, Murang'a was the one that began. And so as we start, we had Trans Nzoia saying they're beginning reflections. And when they provide a framework, that is the beginning. Last month, we had an opportunity to bring duty bearers, the governments of Bungoma, Vihiga, Busia, and Bugoma. And we brought them together with farmers who are practicing agroecology. And there was an exchange. This is what happening on the ground. This is what policymakers are being brought for. So for 3 days, these policymakers came. They discussed about the pathways that this policy provides. But of course, they mentioned that funding of the implementation remains a challenge. So for instance, even let's not talk about agriculture. Let's talk about the Maputo commitments by the government. Now look at agriculture is decentralized. Look at the percentages of the budgets that are allocated to agriculture. Look at the budgets that are allocated to climate financing, because climate financing should also be available for farmers to adapt to climate change. So what I can say is we've made a good step of ensuring in some of the counties we have policy framework. However, we still have more work to do by dedicating resources. And where I come from is I look at, for instance, the extension service system. If we are going to change our implementation of framework of agroecology in the country, we must start, who is the extension agent? The extension agent is being trained by institutions. What are the institutions and curriculum used by those institutions? So that when an extension service service agent is placed for the community, you have to really reshape their head mindset into having a paradigm shift to sustainable food systems from the conventional agriculture that they've been taught in universities. Now, look at extension service. I've worked in agroecology for the last 8 years. So you have one person who is supposed to support how many people in a location? Very many people. And then the aspect that this service is demand-driven. When you say demand-driven, this person has not enough sufficient fuel to come to your farm to ensure that you're doing contour farming. So you go to Mount Elgon and you see the rain comes heavy and soon the rivers are muddy. Why? Because the top layer, the top soil, which is a wealth, is pushed away because there is no terracing. So for me, thank God we are shifting to having policy framework, but we need investments for the implementation.
And I think this is an area that NGOs need to get their flowers in terms of they have been at the background pushing for these specific policies. So bringing together farmers or farmer groups with policymakers, I think that has been a really important drive that a lot of agroecology don't get appreciated for. That's a good development, I think, a really good direction. You mentioned about climate change there and how it impacts farmers. We've had a lot of conversation around climate change and what is the best way to approach in terms of helping farmers adapt to climate change and see how they can live with it. One of the ways that have been proposed is the issue of carbon farming. So it's a situation where farmers are expected to be paid. From your perspective, how do you see it? And is it a helpful approach to actually helping farmers adapt to climate change?
I must say, I don't understand why farmers have to be paid to take care of the soil that feeds them. Yeah. It's an added advantage to be appreciated. When we talk about agroecology and the environmental dimension, we talk about soil health. We had recently the release of the Soil Atlas for Kenya. And what shocked me was that our soils are dead. Many of the soils that we are working on are dead. So if we are planting crops on dead soil, you can imagine that we are not producing nutritious food. Yeah. So for me, the carbon farming, it depends on how it's done. First, it should not be the sole motivation of the farmer. The farmer benefits additionally from carbon farming. And really, many of the people are focusing on growing trees. Others now are focusing on soil carbon. I have been privileged to be a member of the Carbon Market Association of Kenya because I work with Caritas Kitui for the last 12 years to have a carbon credit finance project that is geared to look at cooking in households in Kitui County. And the project we're looking at is everywhere in Kenya, many of us use wood for cooking. What does this impact on women? It impacts on women's health because we go to fetch the firewood. The 3-stone cookstove technology we use produces a lot of smoke. So we have a lot of respiratory diseases. We also have a lot of blindness because of the smoke. And so my experience over 10 years as the Carbon Country Project Advisor is that we have so far constructed 32,000 cookstoves. And we have a scientific method to measure, one, how much we've reduced in terms of carbon emissions. Two, the parameters that we look at contribution to SDG. We've created 200 green jobs because the cookstove uses local materials. It uses brick. The artisans are trained locally, so it provides a job. If you construct the cookstove, you're paid for constructing like a local fundi, that cookstove. So there are multiple impacts we've seen that. In regards to carbon farming, I work with an organization called Kimaeti Farmers Association. It has 12,000 smallholder farmers in Busia and Bungoma County. And those farmers have changed the face of Kimaeti because of agroforestry. They have changed the face of their farms because of continuous addition of carbon in the soil through composting. This has translated, one, to more incomes, two, to be able to change the environment, and three, to produce nutritious food. Additionally, they've been working with VI Agroforestry, a Swedish organization, to ensure that they get carbon credits from the farming they do. What the money does, it comes to groups. Then the groups begin what we call rural financial advisory, rural financial access, because they lend out loans to their members. So in that way, it can be very benefiting. But I would also like to say that it's an approach, but we have to be careful for implementation to avoid farmers being taken advantage of because they have to sign contracts regarding to the carbon farming on their land. And also sometimes the project developers are not very open and transparent about the money that comes and the profit share between the developer and the farmer.
So there's a challenge in terms of data collection?
I think for me, it's just the challenge is now we are happy that there is the carbon market regulation law that regulations that were put in by the government of Kenya in 2024 in May that governs especially benefit sharing between project developers and the farmers themselves. And I think for me, that was a real big gap that people would take advantage of, because there was no framework, but now there's a framework. But I have seen carbon farming benefit some and also bring tears to some. So it's a double-sided sword, depending on who is implementing.
How would you define carbon farming? Like, what is it?
Carbon farming is you're using a lot of soil as the sink. So what you do is you increase the carbon in the soil, and really doing a circular economy. Let me give you an example. I work in Western Kenya. And what shocked me in Western Kenya is that when they harvest the maize stalk, they burn them. Now, if we are going to, because we have been told our soil is dead. So when we use the maize stalk and use that for composting and return it to the soil, we increase the organic matter. Yeah. So we are making anything that is brown. Remember, that's carbon. If you did biology, is it biology or physics? Yeah, chemistry, where we had carbon and we had potassium and we had phosphorus. And those are key elements when you're doing farming. So when you do that, then these dead materials, you convert them in the soil, and the soil is able to absorb a lot of carbon dioxide, reducing emissions. So that's probably what you call carbon farming. And the other thing is that they also plant trees. Trees breathe in carbon dioxide, they release oxygen. So that's really the basic element. So you'll find people saying, we've planted trees. And that's the misconception. You'll find people saying, I have a carbon project. There's a difference, my brother, between growing trees and planting trees. And it's very, very tough to grow trees, and especially in semi-arid Kenya. I have worked in Makueni. I work in Kajiado. When you have places, number one, like parts of Makueni, when it really gets dry, boreholes turn saline. Like, for instance, you remember when we had 5 missed rains, failed rains. So we have 5 nurseries. And we had trees drying because you water them with borehole water and it's saline. So for me, when somebody said, oh, we are doing carbon projects, planting trees, then I'm like, are you planting trees or you're growing trees? Because growing is what is important. And most important is also to know, are the grown trees already cut? Because the essence of carbon farming is that the tree grows to continuously absorb excess carbon dioxide in the environment and lessen the amount that we have in the atmosphere.
Yeah, certainly that makes sense. And I think it's an interesting space that has a lot of people interested, especially you've said like there's a good side and the bad side, and the bad side has been in the news a lot. So I think that's an area that needs a lot of conversation around and really getting this information to a regular person in Kenya. So yeah, we have a lot of work to do in that space. The other thing that I think small-scale farmers struggle with is income. We said about agroecology is also about making farmers actually get money to their pockets. And one of the struggles that small-scale farmers face is how do they make money consistently? So for example, if a small-scale farmer plants maize or vegetables, they're going to wait like 3-4 months before they can get any income. So how can we help these farmers? How can we help them at least make money or have like a cash flow continuously over time?
The last 3 months, we've had conversation with leaders of farmers groups that we work. We started working and now we have 750 farmers groups across 10 counties. And the question is, a farmer needs money. The question is, in every rural area, there's a market day. So I was asking them, on Tuesday is a market day. What are you taking into the market? Because what we do, we have a component on economic dimension, household budgeting and planning. So you have from January to December, and you have the agroecological calendar of that region. We know when it rains. We have the meteorological forecast. Many people were saying this, kwani wao ni Mungu. But much more, it's very clear that the meteorological service has been delivering very accurate information regarding rains. So we ask a farmer, normally we have the farmers being accompanied by community extension service agent. So when we work with communities, they have to select farmers who live in that village, who farm themselves and who are very good in farming, to be trained to accompany them in terms of farming. So because the farmers are in groups, we want to ask now, when does it rain in Muchongoi? What enterprises do you have on the farm? In January, what are you taking to the market? In February, what are you taking to the market? Like that every month. And then we also look at when cash is needed most. Like for us, we know in January, people have to take children to school. In April, because Farming is no longer just tunalima, or we are just farming because my mother did that. We are farming knowing that our children must go to school. We are farming knowing that we have to build infrastructure on the farm. We are farming knowing that we have to add additional investments, whether it's buying an additional cow or a better breed. So all this is something that we do in terms, every year the community agents in every place we work meet with the project team. And then we look at the agroecological zones, we look at the forecast, we look at the farmers, because the farmers are accompanied, 50 farmers are accompanied by one person who goes in every farm to see what they are. Remember, they are a group, they are marketing together. So they are asking themselves, what are we marketing together? And this is shifted from the cooperative movement that we've had in the country. And the cooperative movement, remember, it was really built on cash crops. So incomes is about planning with the farmer. Remember, many of them are dependent on rain. So you must look at, do we have poultry? Before I sell a sheep, I can sell a chicken for the needs. We have a lot of what we call food forest farming, where we ensure that every farmer is able to plant 25 trees for timber, for fruit, and for ensuring that they have herbs to serve, because a food forest has 7 layers. So in the 7 layers, the canopy is often timber trees or long-term trees. So we have nurseries established with technical advisors on agroecology and community nurseries. And each nursery, we have 45 nurseries in the country. So each nursery serves around 300 farmers, and they decide what is to be grown, what is to be multiplied. And so that is how ensuring that the farmer has diverse crops that are available to be sold. Remember, maembe ni ya musimu. So if you plant maembe only, then of course the maembe season is gone. If you plant maize, which, I mean, in this country, ugali is the only food. Yeah, it's only for a season. And quickly they sell to brokers at throwaway prices, and then they go back to buy food. So this is the conversation we are having with the farmers. A mindset shift that we have to plan. Same as pastoralists. I have a discussion with a pastoralist in Shompole, and I ask, how much do you sell for your fruit need? He says, okay, every month I sell 1 goat. Then we do a budget, and then we're like, so how do you live on this? So this is we have an economic model that is trained throughout the country. They've set up small banks, not VSLAs, because this is a safety net. It's not money that follows cycles and break. It's a safety net. When things are thick, you can get a loan for school fees at less than 5%. And so far, we have 450 community banks that they are running. And some of them have half a million, and they only contribute 20 shillings, 50 shillings. But remember, if you started contributing 20 shillings since 2017 to now for every member, because of compounding, then you can get your money. Yeah.
So it's more of like convincing farmers, instead of going yourself, you can join a group, and then through that group, you can sort of secure yourself from a lot of things that go around. So if there's a high or there's a low, you can go into this group and they can help you out.
Yes, but they must be based on values. They set the value systems for the groups, because, my friend, this country, the value system is taking ourselves to the dogs. So they have 5 values. Most of the groups have 5 values. They have 1, the value of honesty and transparency. Number 2, they have a value of sisterhood and brotherhood, companionship. Value number 3 is togetherness and working together, unity. So they first set up the values, and we do not start with savings or VSLAs or those banks before we have to work together. So we start with the agroecology farming component. This is where we work the soil. By the time you know who escapes from common labor, you know who is going to be the treasurer. So For 1.5 years, farmers work together to improve the soil health, to improve productivity, so that they are not looking for money to bring the 20 shillings to the group. And interesting, what we did is we did a mini research throughout the country. We went to communities and we asked women, what is the one thing that stresses you? And you can imagine they told us vegetables. I mean, we grew up with vegetables. You remember that we grew up with onions that you can cut. Now, these days, since 2018, we saw farmers who would eat ugali with oil. And so we started the biointensive kitchen study. We've helped farmers over 15,000 to establish kitchen gardens. And then now the kitchen gardens are there for not just for diversity. And when we talk about kitchen gardens, we are talking about not skuma, not spinach. We are talking about a diverse kitchen garden that should have 60% on carbon crops. And the carbon crops are the ones that we are talking about. Some millet, we talk about some amaranthus, because when you talk of carbon crops, it's those crops with a lot of biomass that once you remove, you can compost it. And then we talk about 30% calorie crop. Here we are talking about sweet potatoes. We are talking about Irish potatoes. We are talking about njugu karanga, or you call groundnuts. We are talking about cassava. And then the 10% is vegetables. And we emphasize on indigenous vegetables, the pumpkin leaves, the jute mellow. We talk about issues to do with nightshade, black nightshade. So that's how the farms are designed.
Yeah, I think that's a manageable approach to helping farmers. The other point is about, yes, we are encouraging farmers to grow the indigenous vegetables. And I think there's a lot of more people now are talking about it. Hey, we need to grow more of our indigenous vegetables. The other part is the consumption point of view, right? So we have children nowadays who maybe don't know about these like indigenous vegetables, the managus, the tereres. Is there a way we can incentivize them to like consider eating these vegetables? What is the best approach to make them at least consider these indigenous foods?
When we decided to talk about traditional indigenous vegetables, is we went to the research done by a professor in Jomo Kenyatta University, who talked about the diverse nutrients, and especially with the health of children below 10 or below 5. That's what they normally use. And also for lactating mothers and women in their reproductive age. Now, when we talked about in Western Kenya, more than often, you will find that traditional indigenous vegetables are embedded. But one of the things that really surprises me is when you look at the statistics, for instance, of Kakamega County, the level of malnutrition is shocking. So what is not happening? Remember, home science was taught and then it disappeared. So we could be preparing vegetables and not the right way. And so we started discussing how we would enable families to be able to prepare the vegetables and make them attractive for everyone across. I've just talked about pumpkin. For instance, one of the challenges we have is deworming of kids and of people. And the kind of water we are having and how we prepare our food, it's very easy to get worms. One of the biggest available dewormer we have is pumpkin seeds and the pumpkin. But when we prepare, and we've been having conversation in communities, the men will not eat because it's just there. It's not exciting. So this year we are going to have, yes, a conversation, and we will have 4 schools in communities. We are going to have 2 in August and 2 in December. And it's really looking at feminist agroecology. And here we talk about the women's role in agroecology. It is not to talk about women are the farmers and blah, 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 but we are looking at what is the role of the women in our communities. And one is food and diets. Besides that, we call them women are the guardians of the soil, life, and seed. Because if you go to communities, if we talk about who is taking care of life, nurturing, life, the mothers. So we are going to have first, like for instance, we have changing dietary exposures, like for the Ma community. The Maasai for so long have relied on food that is milk, that is blood, and that is meat. But now they are having a diversified palette of vegetables. So the question is, who took them to class, or who taught them about cooking lesson? And we had a conversation with them because we do what we call participatory internal evaluation. And they told us, Stella, could we have somebody come to us and do cooking classes? And when I told my colleagues, women are asking, they want to know how to cook chapati, and especially in remote regions. We are not talking about Kajiado in town. We are talking about places that are really remote. And we said yes. And we were able to be facilitated. So we will have nutrition classes, cooking classes for about 1,200 Maasai women coming in August, actually the first or second week of August. So the whole thing about indigenous foods and diets, it's really a conversation that should be with a nutritionist, but also with old women who are able to pass the knowledge, and also with the young knowledge, the intergenerational. That's what we call the social dimension. We have an opportunity. Agroecology is not just being a cake. It's not just being indigenous. It's indigenous plus science. So when we come with a nutritionist who will allow us, and we want to ask the Sabaots in Mount Elgon where we work, why do we have to put milk inside saga or in this vegetable? Then they have a nutritionist who can also explain what are the good or the bad of this practice. And also the women who are old can tell them, you have been doing this. These are the reasons. And then we have a discussion. For instance, I have been asking myself, apart from the Kosewes, why is it that in rural communities, if I go to Kakamega or I go to Kocholia market, why isn't there the food, a restaurant that prepares the local traditional food that I can get in and say, I'm in Tesoland. They are able to roast the meat and dry it and cook it with peanuts. Why isn't it attractive that if you come to my region, you can find a hotel that specializes in Kampa tradition, where they can use the pearl millets to really prepare good food locally? Why? Because I've traveled to Europe, and I've been privileged to know each region has its own speciality. And you can go to 1, 2, 3 restaurants that are known for a speciality of that region. Isn't that an opportunity? And I'm very excited that last week AFSA is the Continental Body Promoting Agroecology, invited chefs from across the continent to discuss about African cuisine using indigenous diets. I'm really excited that this is packing.
Yeah, I think we need more of those. And I think for a long time, we didn't have that mentality. Hey, we can actually package our knowledge, our local foods to be able to be attractive to other people. So this is like Italy has been able to export their cuisines, their lasagna and stuff to other nations. Same with Mexico and other areas. So I think that's an opportunity for us, especially now we have like devolved units. I think it's empowered local communities to also like embrace their identity. So there's an opportunity there as well. Something very interesting about it is that you also run your own like agroecology farm. Tell us about your experience. Like, how has it been running the farm? And also like having to run, like also coordinating other areas of your life. So how has been that, like, if you call it part-time farming experience, been for you?
Yes, I'm not a Facebook farmer. I started farming. For me, farming has been part of my good place of finding peace. It's my place to go and think also. Retreat. I call it my retreat place. When I started Oldonyo Sabuk farm.
So what's behind the name?
Because it's on Oldonyo Sabuk Hill. It's in southeastern Kenya, very dry, semi-arid. And when I began the journey of agroecology in 2016, I had a piece of land and I wanted to also experience what any other small older farmer, it's not a lot of land, it's 2.5 acres, and really experience the techniques that we were getting to learn of working with the land. One, I had no water. There was no road. Yeah, so there was no road. I would leave my small Toyota down and walk up the hill where the land is. And there were all challenges that we find when you're setting up a farm. Untrained workers who will ask you, please buy CAN as you come. My beginnings was to first, the farm had only 2 trees, which were mango trees. So when I cleared it, the only trees that remained standing were 2 mango trees. Most importantly, because it's the hill, it's on a slope. So what happens is the rest of the place is not terraced. So what happens is that part of the farm is when it rains on the hill, then water comes rushing. So the first thing was to get an extension agent to help me in measuring the contours. Before I had been taught about the A-frame, which I can do now myself. And to get that man to come to my farm took 3 weeks of booking because he's in charge of a big area. He uses a motorbike. I had to fuel the motorbike and also to give him a meal or whatever they call it. So when I began, I didn't have a water source. So where would I get the water source? My farm is located in a cooperative society. I'm a member of Mukamuku Farmers Cooperative Society. And during that time, the society had created dams. So where was I fetching water? With a donkey, down the dam and coming back. What were the frustration? You plant a tree, it dies. I managed to plant over 500 trees on that land. And it's a mixture of permaculture, agroecology techniques, and syntrophic agroforestry. So I have planted a number of species on that land. I have left part of the land as my zone 5 where I keep bees. And the lessons learned is if you're going to do part-time farming, you have to invest in building the capacities of the people on the farm so that they can carry your vision and dream. And here, one of the things that I would challenge people and an opportunity is there, do we have an online platform where you can say, hey, I need a trained person in animal health, and click and interview them and give them on their post. But if you have invested on the farm so much and you want to bring a class 8 guy who has no clue and you want it to be run properly and correctly, it would never work. One of the things I've learned and which helps me a lot is that their techniques, they take time. You're not going to work on soil today and the productivity shoots. Organic, sustainable farming takes time. To heal the land, it takes time. For trees to grow, you will not plant mangoes today and harvest tomorrow. So the selection of enterprises that we have to do on the farm is to look at your short-term cash flow and your long-term cash flow and the medium-term. Importantly is the issue of theft. We have so many young people who have been used to quick money. So it's very easy that you're working so hard and they come. So you have to think about, if I took so long, I started first with building a micro environment. Ukampani is very dry. So even if you do irrigation and your land is bare, it will take a lot of water. So you have to create a micro environment, plant dry. Now, after 8 years, when I have planted so many trees, what I do is I speak to the avocados. Why are you giving me 3 avocados? And you have a conversation going. Yeah. So for me, it's a journey of looking at where is your water source. That's crucial, because if you have to produce throughout the year, you have to look at what enterprise gives me to pay the worker. And most importantly, my joy is that I eat food that I know where it has come from. For me, that's the biggest. That I know that the ugali I'm eating, I have planted number nane. I have planted cucumber. I have mixed the flour. I have grinded it. I know where it's coming from. When we talk about vegetables, I know what vegetables I'm eating. So for me, the combination of permaculture by intensive gardening, continuous working and listening to the soil, because you have to listen to the soil and watch how it goes. It takes time. It has taught me patience. That is one of the things. Number two, it has taught me it takes long for the balance sheet and the Excel to look like it has some shape. So if young people are going to be engaged in agriculture, it must be they are on a transition stage. They have no patience. So if you have to create programs for young people, it's very important to know that this Excel sheet, it must work. And it must work for the short term, because some look for the short term and not the long term. So it took time and then you have to invest. There is no infrastructure. I think in where my farm is we make the road when somebody dies, because we have to take them to go to the resting place. Do we have a government? Yes, it is there. So it's those are and I see them as the challenges when I go to work in, say, in Makueni or in Baringo. I feel the farmer, because I'm not talking from the desk. I have experience because I do farming.
Yeah, it's a really important point that you mentioned about having the patience, and most people don't understand, like, anything in life takes time, right? Right now, the biggest companies in the world, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Google, it took them a long time for them to be where they are. And in agriculture, and especially where you're dealing with biological stuff, you can't rush them. So you have to give them time. You have to give them the care that it needs for it to move forward and actually produce. I've also consistently have people complain about the workforce, like how to get the right people who will align with your vision, also, or have the knowledge that you need, especially in the organic and the agroecology space. That's also an area that I think a lot of people need an investment in. And as you said, we urgently need a platform where you can actually find people you can go and have them come into your farm. Having said that, I mean, you've just said, like, we have a lot of young people around. What then does it take to actually get these people get interested in farming then? Like, what are the things that we can do to get these farmers into agriculture in the first place?
Very interesting. Last 2 weeks, I was invited to talk about social inclusion into agroecology. And I was told to talk about youth. We're talking about the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha. They are a very interesting generation. You cannot prescribe for them. So it's important, like what we do with the women and men, to have a conversation. What is interesting with them? The average age of a farmer in Kenya is between 50 and 61. One, we have a problem with access to land, because our parents don't want to let go the pieces of land. They think we will sell them. So the conversation about legacy, the conversation about access to land for young people is very important. Number two is to really look at TVET. I have been privileged for the last 3 weeks to be given a scoping exercise to look at what programs are we giving in vocational trainings. And I have, from my own experiences, that the people who know how to train the farmers techniques are not degree people. There are people with certificates, there are people with, they're technical. And I have been looking at which organization or which TVET, especially in Western Kenya and in South Coast, offer courses that make people specialize in things that would be paid for a service. For instance, we have beekeeping. Beekeeping would need some level of youth. We have processing of the honey. We have an opportunity. Okay, we set up the apiary, and once we set up the apiary, we locate the beehives. Now you need somebody to monitor for safari hunts, for termites, for whatever to enable. Is there an app, or is there something that young people can generate to look at that? I have met many farmers who would like grafting. Remember, avocado is a superfruit heading to China. But then, can you call many people who look for grafting and pruning? Because you have to prune avocados, you have to prune mangoes, you have to prune citrus. Who is available? Often this is a skill for those who stayed with the coffee farming because they would need to prune. Where would you train this? It's a quick skill that you need to learn so that they know for maximum production, for instance, of mangoes, you need open pruning to allow the mango to be able to get enough sunlight to produce fruit. So they need to have some areas of specialization that you just click and say, hello, I need somebody to harvest my honey and to process and to pay. Or artificial insemination. This is, of course, with the permission of the veterinary person. So the question is, how prepared are we to have a paradigm shift regarding youth inclusion in sustainable farming or food systems? What is it they are interested in? I was very surprised. I keep some chicken, but I have a small solar archer of 56 eggs. Now it's very cold. I came across a technology, a lunar technologies that you have an app to check on the brooder. So you can know humidity, you can know the heating. This is something interesting. Why? Because a lot of poultry farmers lose their chicks because of these things about heating. You've put your maca there and that maca went out or chicks came too close, they got burned. And I found that quite interesting. So I think if we talk about processing, we were talking about the traditional indigenous vegetables. There are plenty when it rains. In season of dry, they aren't there. We have a lot of tomatoes that are plenty, but when it's raining is when people buy a tomato, one tomato between 10 and 15 shillings. So why are we not drying? Why are we not value adding? For instance, when we started agroecology, we were looking to employ people who have done agroecology. As a course, we got, of course, people who have done organic farming. And so we had to recruit those who had done organic farming or somebody who has a diploma in general agriculture and then retrain them on aspects of agroecology from a movement perspective so that they are able to transfer and retrain them on pedagogy. There's a difference between when you are trained on a subject and how to transfer that, what you know, to farmers. Because you are trained in English. We are trained also without adult facilitation techniques. The farmers are women. They have come with a baby to the meeting. You cannot keep the meeting very theory. Many of them are not educated. So our farming trainings for farmers in the communities is practically oriented. I also want to explore really a lot of agriculture is done in rural Kenya. For me, I'm thinking, can't we have an incubation for young people in rural areas to think about ideas of how they want to be and be provided the space with mentors and available capital to test their ideas? For me, it's very important that we focus, yes, the e-commerce, but there's a lot of need in rural areas regarding farming.
Something interesting about yourself is that you've been in the NGO world for a long time, I think 20 years for now. You've involved yourself in raising money. So I'm guessing there's someone out there who maybe want to start an NGO or they're trying to look for ways they can attract or like get more sponsors to fund their NGO to help their the project that they have. What are the key tactics or what are the key things that you can advise them for them to look at when they're trying to get funding for their projects?
The development aid sector or international cooperation is getting tough and tough. I'm privileged. Every June, I give visiting lecture sessions at the NGO Leadership and Management course in Ekima College that is offered, and really is to look at from theory to practice. My way is not the only way, because I have also had to learn. I have been in NGO work, especially they're not very common, what we call fractional engagement. That means you work for several different agencies, so there's time dedication. Number one is your motivation solid? Because you will write many proposals and they will be rejected. The foundation for me is really local-led development. And local-led development is really sitting with communities, getting to know their needs, letting them decide through priority ranking what is important to them. And together then craft, because fundraising, what you're asking, it's about presenting an idea to possible people and present it in the best way you can. It's a game of resilience. It's about consistency. It's about transparency. Because I have been privileged to work with many local development organizations. And one of the things is that oftentimes we shift the NGO work that we are doing from the people to ourselves. So we are busy raising money, not to impact on people, but it becomes a job. True NGO work is when Stella is no longer needed in a place because the community has been able to find their purpose and to reach their goal. When we talk of NGO work, I would rather go to impact investing. That you are looking for people who are willing to invest in the work you do because it has impact. The traditional NGO of proposal writing is that now we have a global shift. Many of the countries have reduced their money because one, of national interest, two, a shift in the global order towards international cooperation, and even, like for instance, the funding agencies that we work, they get money from their governments has reduced funding. So for me, it's very important to be patient, to learn every day. Remember that each nation has its own interest. It's good to align what idea you have, who is ready to be there. And what really annoys me is with the evolution of a lot of internet, is that you still see people sending blind proposal. Blind proposal is you sent a proposal to me. You have not checked what is the purpose of my organization. Probably you're sending to me and I don't work in your county. Or you're sending a proposal to an organization in a topic that they are not interested in. So do research. Research. Take your time. Read what they're interested in you. Link the needs assessment you've done with the communities, with the highlights of the partner or the money that you're seeking. It's not an easy ride.
Yeah. Interestingly, you started Act for Change. From your perspective, like, you can just let us a little bit, what do you do, and what has been your things that you are proud of been doing with Act for Change?
Act for Change Trust is an organization that enables local organizations to reach out to global funding agencies. So we are an intermediary. And an intermediary means that we are looking at what's the language. We have our cultural languages. We have the donor's language. So we are a non-contractual intermediary. We want to work with communities, local organizations that are close to the people at the margins. And this organization builds capacities of local organizations to be able to deliver what they promised to deliver to the communities. So we are coaches, we are company, we build monitoring systems, we ensure that the reporting aligns to the requirements of the donor, and we have done that, and we are happy to have impacted many communities by being intermediary. Act for Change is nationwide. We are working with partner organizations in 12 counties and supporting the work of 2 Swiss donors that belong to an alliance for food system change in Switzerland. So that for us is that we work with the partner, both from the north and the south, to really meet the needs of the community. Yeah. So we call ourselves a bridge between the funder and local civil society organizations.
Yeah, interesting. I've seen some of your work, so it's an empowering work you're doing in terms of because there's always that disconnect. Maybe you are actually speaking or you have similar mission, but it's just like the framing or like the understanding between two parties can make them not work together. So I see the need for such an organization. Lastly, you've been in this space, I think the NGO world, for 20 years, in the agroecology space as well. When it's all said and done, what would you like people to say about you in terms of like the impact you brought into this space?
I think for me is I came, I impacted, and I left. That's all for me. For me, it's my greatest motivation is when I go to the field and I listen to a community that has found and has worked with a partner and realized their dreams. I am very contented. I sit with women and they tell me the story of not having food and that they can feed their kids, that they can buy salt, that they can buy a pencil, that they have been elected on a school board. Just as a member of the BOM, I say, wow. I go to communities where water was an issue. They've been mobilized, created sand dams that allow them to farm at least 7 or 8 months in a year. I am very contented. When I sit with the Maasai women and they are laughing and saying how they have their own money, that they can make decisions, and that when there's a drought and their husbands have moved with their animals to Tanzania and they can still have kids in school and buy food, I have made my impact.
That's a powerful impact for sure. So towards the end, I usually have this thing I called rapid fire questions. So what I've done, I've prepared 10 questions for you. The idea being I'll just throw the question at you and then you'll give me like a short, quick answer to the questions. Hopefully guys will get to know a little bit better than it came through the podcasts. Ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, so the first question is, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A lawyer.
And second, if soil had a voice, what's one thing they will beg us to stop doing?
Stop killing us.
Third question, which historical figure do you draw inspiration from?
Professor Wangari Maathai.
Fourth, what habit has changed how you lead?
Collaborative. Each person has something to bring on the table.
Fifth question, what's one farming myth you wish we could debunk once for all?
Agroecology cannot feed the world.
Sixth, if you could only eat one indigenous meal for the rest of your life, what will it be?
Kuku and ugali made with indigenous maize is the place to be.
Nice. Seventh question, what's one book that shaped how you think about food and farming?
Laudato Si by Pope Francis.
Eighth, what's one remote place in Kenya that you haven't visited but you will want to go?
Somewhere in remote Turkana.
Ninth question, what's the quote that fuels your work during tough seasons?
Patience pays.
Last question, if you could sit with your 18-year-old self today, what's one piece you would give to her?
Be easy on yourself.
So those are 10 questions. From me is thank you very much for making time for the podcast. I really appreciate it. There's a lot of knowledge you've shared that I think a lot of people will appreciate. For those who want to get to reach to you or want to follow your work, how could they do that?
I will share my email and our website that they continue, and also my LinkedIn page, because I post a lot on my LinkedIn page. Yes.
Yeah. LinkedIn, that's how I get to know you. So really, really urge everybody who's on LinkedIn to do that. So yeah, thank you very much. And till the next podcast, remember to be organic. Cheers.